I'm Zach Brittle. I live in Seattle, Washington, United States of America. That's in the Pacific Northwest. So it is 8 o'clock in the morning here on a fall day. I'm in my house where I live with my wife, Rebecca. We've been married 28 years. Our thing is that we say we've been happily married for 25 out of 28 years. We have 3 pretty significant periods of disharmony that we've weathered together, which is one of our proudest things. We have 2 daughters. They are 19 and 23. One of them just spent 3 weeks in Australia. She's traveling the world right now. The other one is living in our house. She has just graduated from college. I'm a couples therapist in private practice. I don't think I'm an expert, a relationship expert. Oh, people ask me this all the time. And what I tell people usually is that I don't have a perfect marriage, but I also don't have any excuses. So that's my elevator speech generally when I'm coming into the world. I have other things, like I've written a couple of books, I've got a podcast, I have friends and hobbies, but mostly I just hang out with my family and do my job.
So you've been sober, Zach, for 5 years now. Am I correct?
5 years today. Today I get my
Oh.
5-year chip today. So
So well done, first of all.
thanks.
So talk to us about why you decided to quit and how you did it.
Yeah, I am a little bit of a unicorn. I decided to quit. I chose the day. I chose November 13th because the 13 is my favorite number. But it was during COVID. There was the lockdown. A lot of people during lockdown either got really healthy or really sick. They either started doing all the things like eating right and walking 10 miles a day and whatever, or they got depressed and despairing and into their online gambling or drinking. And I definitely was in the latter category. I've had a problem with alcohol probably since before I even had my first drink. I can think back to like middle school stories I have about it, but definitely during COVID, it accelerated in this really aggressive and problematic way for me. I started waking up wondering if I wanted to wake up. My memory started to go. I started not remembering things. My relationships were falling apart with my kids and my wife. And I just got to the point where I was like, I can't survive like this anymore. Literally, that was the thinking I had. There was a guy in my life, his name is Dave, that I'd known for years and years. And he was a sober guy in his 70s. Just a guy I knew and a guy I liked. So I just went to him one day and I was like, yeah, I'm ready. And he's like, are you sure? I was like, yeah. He says, because if you're not ready, don't even try. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. He made me like commit to being sure. So Dave is an AA guy. He agreed to take me under his wing as a sponsee and had me going to meetings, and him and another guy were like a little bit of a tag team, and they just started meeting with me and reading through the big book and telling me stories and asking me questions. And for me, this is why I say I'm a little bit of a unicorn, is I quit drinking on the 13th of November. By Thanksgiving, I was done. I didn't have any more interest in or cravings around alcohol. But I definitely had a lot harder time recovering from anger and resentment and the spiritual side. The way I did it was mostly through like working the steps, just working the 12 steps with Dave and Jim. I wasn't an AA guy. I didn't go to a lot of meetings. In fact, I've only been to 3 in-person meetings in my entire life. The meeting that I found was a meeting in South Africa. It was the first meeting I went to, and it was an online meeting, and it became my home group. And I just went to this meeting in South Africa in Durban for a couple of years, and that was where I kept myself sane. And they meet twice a day, and it was amazing. I formed a little community there, and I felt known and seen. It's a speaker meeting, so every day somebody was just telling their story, and it just became my home and a really essential, critical part of my healing. I don't really go to meetings anymore, probably a couple of years since I've been regularly attending. I didn't create another dependency. That was always a fear of mine. I was really not interested in trading one dependency for another. Yeah, I'm going today. I'm just going to drop in and celebrate my birthday and see some old friends and whatnot. But yeah, South Africa has got a warm place in my heart. I'm glad to be talking to you on this day from that place because it's near and dear to me.
Oh, that's a nice story. I always say to people that the most important thing you can do to get sober is to find your people.
I think that's true. And I got really lucky really fast. Like my first meeting, I just was like, yep, this is my meeting. But I know plenty of people who've had rough experiences because they didn't click with the vibe or the time or the judgment or whatever it is that they experience. So I just always tell people, like, hang in there.
Because of the online world, there are so many different ways to get sober, different groups. I went, but it didn't really work for me. So eventually I started my own group, and that's what I've been the last 10 years. But there's so many these days, so many online sobriety groups.
And I think too, like the biggest thing for me, honestly, was the group work for sure, but just being in a consistent conversation with Jim and Dave for 2 years. Accountability and perspective and just consistency was a big part of it for me too.
Yes. I always say that I had a long-suffering husband because he put up over drinking for at least a decade, and we nearly split up because of it. But I gathered that you had a long-suffering wife when you were drinking.
Sure. We were drinking buddies and we had a lot of fun with that. That was just our kind of our jam. We enjoyed going to parties and going out to restaurants, and we took turns over drinking, and sometimes we would drive in inappropriate ways or whatever. And she was always healthier than me. She just always was just more responsible than me. So she did have to put up with me for a very long time. And I think when I finally got sober, she just let her guard down. She just got to relax all of a sudden. And then her disease caught up with her because she didn't have to split her energy between taking care of me and taking care of herself. The way Dave describes it, my sponsor, is there's a child's mobile floating over a crib. And when you grab one of them and you stop this piece, you stop this one piece from moving, the rest of them freak out a little bit. They don't immediately settle like the one. So you take a guy or system that is used to operating in this rhythm around alcohol. You stop a part of it, me, the others started to freak out. They started to like go a little bit crazy. Yeah, she had her own process. She's about 2 years behind me. We're very different in our recovery. She goes to meetings regularly. She's very involved. She volunteers. She's of service. And she's probably relapsed, I don't know, half a dozen times in the last 3 years, but it's always like for one night.
Yeah.
And it's a lapse, but we just have had very different journeys. But right now it's like the best. We enjoy each other. We've found new hobbies. We're operating as adults. That's a big thing for me. Before, I feel like I was just still a child. Not like I grew up until about 5 years ago. And so now we're like adults together, which is really nice.
Yeah. When we quit drinking, we have to learn how to do life, don't we?
Yeah.
And then your 15-year-old daughter had a bit of a blip as well with mobile.
Yeah, she spun out too. You grab me and you stop my sort of mobile part from moving. You grab Rebecca and her part stopped moving. And then Mary was here in the house and she spun out. She had been carrying too much weight and responsibility of trying to stay safe and sane in her own right. And when finally we pulled it together, she was like, okay, my turn. And it wasn't strictly around alcohol. It just was around like trying to find her own voice and her own independence, and that manifests in some acting out and some bad behavior. I don't really like to call it bad behavior, but she just wasn't herself. What's cool is that she's come back around. She's 19 now. I just talked to her last night. She's can't wait to come home and be with us and hang out. The moral of the story ultimately for me and for us is that you just do the work. You do the work and there are consequences, but ultimately health is the benefit. And yeah, now we're all doing great. Both my kids are responsible drinkers. We haven't governed that. We don't put any of our own stuff on them, kind of knowing that if they end up in trouble, they're going to have to figure it out in their own time, in their own way. Just come to understand that I never in my life ever one time learned anything before I was ready to learn it. Like never once. So I'm trying to teach them something and they're like, I'm not ready. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll be here when you are.
You know where I am.
Yeah.
You mentioned benefits. So talk to us about your top 3 benefits of sobriety.
I just feel like a grown up. I just feel like an adult in the world. If I had 3 other benefits though, one, without question, easy peasy, is I sleep like a baby. I had all this disruptive sleep because I had to get up in the night and pee all the time, or because I was passing out on the couch, or because I woke up hungover or whatever. And now I fall asleep naturally. I sleep through the night. I wake up, I'm refreshed. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like you just sleep the amount of time that you're supposed to sleep, that your body needs. I think another one is my brain is just clean and clear. And like, I think clearly and I believe the things that come out of my mouth versus I'm always trying to hedge or cover or dodge or weave or whatever. Then if there's a third one, it really just comes, I think, back down to being in a healthy relationship with my wife. Maybe that's the first one, but just being in a place that is calm and predictable and, I mean, less expensive. When I first quit drinking, I started doing Legos all the time. I was buying these Lego sets and I was making like $200 Lego sets all the time. My kids were like, Dad, you're spending so much money on Legos. And I said, you guys, I'm spending so much less money. I'm saving so much money. You have no idea how much money I'm saving right now. So we have the freedom to do stuff. We get to spend money that we would otherwise be just dumping down our gullets.
Yeah. It's mind-boggling how much money we waste on it.
It's insane. I used to be really hyper about my money, and I kept it all on this program called 𝐸𝐾𝐿. It was like just a tracking software. And I went back and I looked at how much I spent at this one bar where I was a regular, just the one bar where I was regular. And it was like $1,000 a month just at the bar. That's $12,000 a year. It's insane. You know what you can do with $12,000 a year?
Yeah, and when you think that we're doing so much harm to our bodies and our brains and shortening our lives and paying over the odds for it, doesn't it?
No, it's so bizarre. And I didn't even know I had an extra $1,000 a year. That's the weird part. So no, I can't do this or that other thing. I don't have any money.
So we touched on relationships already, but I've got a community and it's mostly females. I'd say 95% females. And so many of them struggle because they want to give up and they're trying their best to give up, but the partner carries on drinking, thinks they're crazy, tells them they don't have a problem at all because they don't drink anyway, and they tell them that they're just not fun anymore. And it's tricky, and I do feel for them. My husband was completely relieved when I stopped, so I have down that place. But so many of them, and some of them have given up. They said, I can't do this. It's ruining my relationship. And other people have actually left their relationship, which sometimes it has to be like that if the partner just
sometimes
be supportive. So talk to us about that. If a couple came to you and said, he's drinking, I'm not, he's not going to change, what can we do?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think if I speak out of my own experience, I just didn't care about Rebecca's drinking. It was a non-factor in my sobriety. Like, I had to get sober. I had to do it. It was the right thing to do. It was going to save my life. And so whatever she chose to do, at least initially in the acute phases, I just had to take my eye off the ball and off her ball. I just couldn't do it. But once I had my feet under me, and maybe this is the variable that's really important for your people to hear, is I had my feet underneath me. I was really clear. I was really solid in my sobriety. Like, I knew that this was the way I was going to live my life, and I knew that it was important to me. And I also knew that the way she was living her life wasn't going to work for me for intimacy. That was the main thing. Like, it wasn't about the survival of the relationship. I was clear I wasn't going to leave Rebecca. If I needed to stay married and stay miserable, I was willing to do that. But I just sat her down and said, if we're going to have a healthy relationship, if we're going to have an intimate relationship, I need you to address this. And this is this thing that you need to pay attention to. When I'm thinking about your audience, I don't know if that would jive or would work, but I think the heart of it for me, like the mission statement for me, is take care of yourself. Make sure that you have your feet underneath you, that you are in a healthy place. And then the way I think about it too is when you get to the healthy place, you just make camp there. You build a tower, you set up a lighthouse, and you say, come here to this healthy place, partner. And I think sometimes we don't get to decide if our partners are healthy. They might think they are. They might think that they don't drink too much. They might think that their problem is not a big deal. What they don't get to decide is whether or not it's working for you.
Yeah.
If your listeners are like, look, maybe you don't drink too much, but maybe you drink 1 beer a month. That's not working for me. Again, you don't get to decide that 1 beer a month is too much, but you do get to decide this isn't working for me. So then we have to figure out, okay, then what is going to work? Does she, let's just call her a she, does she need to work on some of her own coping and some of her own growth, or does he need to quit drinking that 1 beer a month? I don't really know exactly, but it has to start from a healthy, centered, grounded place for her in this made up scenario that I've created. And I think that's priority one, is just making sure that you have really solid clarity about your own position and posture. And then we don't really get to decide what other people's posture is going to be, I think.
I think once we do become confident in our sobriety, which can be as early as 6 months, as you said, that's how you the rest of your life. And once we get to that stage, it's relatively easy because this is me. Now we must make this work if we're going to. But when I really feel sorry for people, it's in the early weeks.
Yeah.
You've got someone telling you you're boring and what on earth are you doing and there's nothing wrong. It makes it so much harder. But
Yeah. What I'm about to say is going to sound really harsh, but I would say, who cares? Ignore it. If your partner thinks you're boring, but you're trying to save your own life,
yeah,
like, who cares? That's just one of the side effects. It is hard because you're trying to stabilize this part of the system, and the other part, the rest of the system is going to freak out. It's going to go a little berserk, and that takes a period of time. You said this number, 6 months, and I don't know if that's the right number or not. I know for me, because I was done drinking, really just done with the urge to drink alcohol within about 10 or 14 days, I still had a ton of work to do in my recovery to be sober.
is this how you got into therapy, or have you always been a therapist?
No, I've been a therapist forever. I've been in couples therapy professionally since maybe 20 years. I went to therapy as a client to address my drinking, and that did not help me quit drinking. Her name's Sarah. She's amazing. I'll see her today. Sarah didn't help me quit drinking, but once I did quit drinking, she was a critical part of my emotional sobriety journey, just finding new language and new perspective and reinforcing good habits. I have no problem with alcohol. I actually still enjoy going out to bars with friends. I'm going out with tonight with two of my friends, and we're going to a bar, and I'm going to have some NA beer, and they're going to have regular beer. I have no problem with that. And I'm not even really talking about alcohol or drinking when I'm talking about this. Quitting drinking is one thing. Being sober is a different thing.
Yeah.
And I think if you can commit to being sober, then your partner who doesn't agree with you or who thinks you're boring is just another quirky challenge versus an obstacle to your health.
We've got quite a lot of people that have stayed sober in spite of this partner, and it's been hard for the first few months. And then the partner has realized just how much better they look, how much they've got, and they're thinking, I'll have a go as well. And we've got so many husbands that have followed wives into sobriety. It's lovely.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've just said it yourself, but quitting drinking is such a small part of it.
Because we all know dry drunks, and we all know people who are self-righteous in their sobriety. They're judgmental and they look down on other people. And we all know those people. And I don't think those people are sober. I think those people are just trading one dependency for another. And in this case, it's righteousness. And if you're trying to get your partner to quit drinking through some version of righteousness or self-righteousness, then it's doomed to fail regardless. So this is why I talk about like really getting clear about being in the healthiest space and then inviting your partner to come be with you in that space. That's the model and metaphor that Rebecca and I use quite a bit.
And can you talk to us a bit about relational life therapy?
Sure. Yeah, I love to. It's a little bit of a side quest to talk about it, but I'll bring it back here in a second. Relational life therapy is a methodology of couples therapy that was created by a guy named Terry Real. He's in his 70s and he's in what he would call relational recovery from probably narcissism. I wouldn't say that he's like a narcissist. I met him for the first time 25 years ago, and he was a jerk. I just could not handle him. And now I work with him regularly just through our career paths. He's a delightful man, and he's created this methodology out of his lived experience, both as a person and as a couples therapist. It's not connected directly to alcohol in any way, but there's a big priority on relational recovery. So relational life therapy is really built on the idea that we can't do intimacy unless we are operating out of the wise adult part of our persona, ourselves. When I teach this to clients or when I'm using it with clients, sometimes I swap wise adult for sober adult just because it's language that I like. But it's really about understanding not just the tools and tricks and tips and tactics that you use to be in a healthier relationship, but also gets underneath why we don't use those. So why don't we use those tools? Because of childhood trauma, or because of something like maybe addiction or ADHD, or maybe it's an unhealed wound inside the relationship, or there's reasons. Maybe you have this experience with your community, but I'll give clients homework all the time. Maybe you have assignments or homework for people. Then you come back and go, okay, how did you do? And they go, oh, we didn't do it. Forgot. Or we did it last night. We only got about halfway through. Like, why? Why, if this thing is important to you, are you not doing it? And sometimes they don't have an answer to that question. And RLT, relational life therapy, seeks to expose and heal that answer to that question. in order to invite people to intimacy. What's cool about it for me is that I was certified in and an expert in this other methodology, and I knew that I wanted some additional training. So about 2018, I started getting that training, RLT training. And I actually went to the last live training in 2019, and it was 3 days, and I was in the training during the days and in the bar during the night. And then COVID happened, and that's the story I've already told you. And then as Relational Life Institute was trying to reestablish their strategy after COVID, they took everything online, and I started to study pretty intensively in 2021. So my journey of sobriety included doing work with Jim and Dave, but then also included like really leaning into and studying RLT as a way of living, as a way of being on the planet. And so what I get to do now is talk to clients about how it actually works in my life, not just in theoretical practice. So yeah, Rebecca and I both have done a lot of inquiry into the way we got here. How did we get here? We both had problem drinkers as parents. Like all 4 of our parents were problem drinkers. And we had different strategies and coping mechanisms that we adopted really early on. Like I said, in middle school, I was protecting myself from alcohol, even though I didn't know it. So then alcohol became this like idol or this god or this kind of scary sort of thing that when I finally gained access, I was like, oh, I'm going to tame this beast. And then I couldn't. But all of this insight has been really valuable in terms of trying to understand how to, again, get and to stay healthy. Now, for both of us, get and stay healthy on behalf of our kids, because that's now the place of impact that we have the most consequences.
Interesting. Thank you. And what about advice for anyone listening that might feel isolated or misunderstood in their struggles with alcohol?
I go back to what Dave said to me is, are you ready? Are you ready to work on it? If you're not ready, then there's really no point in trying, unless you have your bottom, unless you have something that forces your readiness, like your car accident or you get fired or whatever. But if you're ready, then do the work. Just do the work. Find a community like yours. Find a sponsor. Find a meeting. Find a book. Find a guru. Find a friend. And just do the work. And the work isn't quitting drinking. The work is getting sober. And that's really about understanding. I have this story that I tell. It's a real pivot point for me in my process, because you go through this process of making amends, and I was very confused about how to make amends. I didn't understand what it was. I didn't understand how to do it, and I was nervous about it. But Jim and Dave had me writing letters to people toward whom I had resentment. So I was writing letters. I was making amends toward people that I had resentment for. So not even people that necessarily I had harmed, but just people that I was angry at. The first letter I wrote was to an aluminum Christmas tree stand. Okay. It was to an inanimate object that had enraged me so much that I destroyed it. I destroyed it. In the middle of destroying it, I drove to a hardware store. I bought a sledgehammer. I came back and I finished it off. I've never been angrier in my life. And there's 2 things about that were interesting to me in my recovery process is that, number one, I was not drinking at that time. And I was completely alone. So I didn't have any alcohol. I didn't have any audience. And still, I was in absolute apoplectic, addictive mindset, like alcoholic brain mindset, because I wasn't able to get this thing to do what I wanted it to do. And when I think about people who are struggling with getting sober, I really invite and endorse and support the question of, what is it really? What are you really addicted to? What's your real drug of choice? Because you can stop buying wine at the grocery store, but can you stop raging internally every time somebody doesn't do exactly what you want? Because that's why you buy wine at the grocery store. Rebecca has a different version of the same story. Her drug of choice is not rage or anger. It's probably closer to control.
Mm.
If you're really ready and you want to get sober, you got to appreciate or anticipate that the work is not about putting down alcohol. It's about understanding what your real drug of choice is and then chasing that. So maybe I'm back to this thing about your friends in your community who are like, my partner thinks I'm boring, or my partner is making my life harder. And I'm okay, but what can you own? Maybe you are boring. And maybe you need to say, yeah, you didn't sign up for this. You didn't sign up for boring me. But I'll tell you what I'll do is let's learn pottery together. Let's go on an adventure hike. Let's see if we can't learn Spanish. There's ways that you can accept that what your partner might be saying to you is true. You don't have to do that in a way that takes you back to alcohol or back to shame. You can do that in a way that says, all right, what are we going to do? Because I'm not moving out of this healthy place. If you still want to drink a beer a month or a beer a night or whatever, okay, but I'm not going to make it my responsibility. I'll take responsibility for what I can, but I'm not leaving the healthy place.
Yeah, that's great advice. I remember in very early sobriety, I felt like I'd lost my personality. I remember saying, well, without wine, I don't have any conversation.
Yeah.
I'm sure I was very boring for a while, but when I got sober, I was so bored, frankly, because it was like, what do I do now? What I did eventually was I started Tribe Sober, and then suddenly I was just so busy with everything. So that was like my project, and it has been for 10 years. But you definitely need a project.
Yeah. Like I said, I recommend Legos. They'll keep you busy for a good day and a half or week and a half. Funny.
I want to know what this Christmas tree stand did to you.
It wouldn't stand the tree upright. It was one of those old school ones that had the 4 prongs, and you had to get them exactly right. And then you drilled the screw into the trunk of the tree and had to get the angle correct. And I was newly married. I really wanted to have it ready when Rebecca came home and have it be beautiful. And it was like the one job I had. And it just, I don't know, man. Still to this day, I don't think I've ever been angrier in my whole life.
I gather that you published a book, haven't you? And you've got a podcast. Talk to us about your podcast.
Yeah, my podcast is called Marriage Therapy Radio. It comes out every week, and the format is that I interview a different couple every week. They're from all walks of life and all over the world, and they have varying degrees of health and dishealth. And the reason I do that is because I realized a long time ago that as a couples therapist, I have this really enormous privilege that a lot of people don't have, which is I have a lot of insight into how relationships work. I just talk to a lot of different people. I've seen people get creative. I've seen them navigate solutions. I understand that there are patterns that people think that they hold. Oh my God, my husband's so defensive. A lot of people's husbands are defensive, and they don't know that because they don't see that. They don't see behind the curtain very often. They maybe know 5 couples. They know their parents, they know their in-laws, they know their friends, they know their neighbors, and that's maybe it. So I'm just going to let people hear from other couples, just hear from how they make it work. And that's been really fun because I've learned a lot, and people have gotten a lot of different kinds of exposure, and I get to talk to interesting people. Right now, I have a couple that I have on the podcast. This is November 2025. The first 3 episodes of November 2025 are one couple, and I'm simulating therapy with them. So it's less of an interview about their life, and it's more like being a fly on the wall in my actual therapy practice, which is really cool. They're super generous. They've been very transparent about their story and their struggle. And so I'm proud of those episodes. I've self-published a couple books. I just signed a book contract for a new one, which is going to come out in the spring of 27. It's on relational recovery and emotional sobriety. Yeah.
Okay. And do you work on Zoom? Because we've got a lot of international listeners, obviously.
I do. My couples practice is pretty full, and most of my practice is in person here in Seattle. But I do have ways to work with people who are interested in getting support online. My name is Zach Brittle, and you just Google my name and you find me pretty easy.